It's your boy, Remoy George Phillip, the first.
And I'm Samantha and Kifler.
This is Masculinity.
The show that investigates the performance of masculinity in the world today, and you know we spell it with a hard K. Happy New Year.
2025, here we are. All right. Faking it till we make it.
Like, really, though. So how were the holidays for you, Remoy?
No, they were fun. They were good. A lot of good friend, fam, chosen family hangs, as they say. Caught a little bit of this sickness, so I'm still recovering from whatever cold, flu bugs that were going around that holiday time. So, we're out here. You?
That's up. I mean, similar, kicked it with my fam, kicked it with some friends a little bit, tried to get some sleep, couldn't. But yeah, also my family met Kenji. Kenji is my aggressively loving 11-month-old pit bull who doesn't know his own strength. And my mom loves him, which I thought she would, even though she said she wouldn't. So yeah, it was fun. 2 weeks flew by and now we're back at work. So
ballpark. How many times did Kenji try to destroy you or destroy a person during this time? 15, 7, 20?
Oh my God. That's destroy me. His version of love is destroying me. So that's an all day, every day phenomenon. I don't know. We'll go for a solid, at least 50. I love him though. I love him so much. He's so sweet.
No, I'm sure. Dog people.
No, I never thought I would be this person. But the other thing that happened is that I think I do have a New Year's resolution.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But I thought you were done with that.
Usually, yeah. But it kind of feels necessary this year. I mean, with everything that's happened, I think I've resolved to write more. I have all these stories in my head that explore gender equity and what it looks like in relationships. So
yeah, I'll just be stacking the Samantha romance novels as they come out. Sure. But nice. Yeah, I thought we were talking about TV today, no?
Well, there goes my brilliant segue. Thanks, Remoy.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Okay. Well, what I was going to say is that the Golden Globes just happened, and there was one show that was nominated for a few things that I think does a decent job demonstrating healthy masculinity. It's called Nobody Wants This. Have you seen it?
And absolutely the F not.
I figure not. Well, Kristen Bell's character co-hosts a podcast about sex and relationships with her friend, and they're working on getting this big podcasting deal, right? So she meets a rabbi at a party and they start dating. The series is essentially, how they navigate that.
I'm assuming Adam Brody with that jawline and that hair, he's the hot care rabbi, right?
You would be right. He is.
And I'm also assuming somehow he's like the nurturing, sweet, kind modeling of healthy masculinity.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair assumption. And you're right. Literally from his OC days all the way up till now, still modeling that just healthy, chill masculinity. And his brother also has some good moments. But what I was actually thinking about is the precursor to these open conversations on TV about women dating and sex and women getting paid to talk about them. Because in 1998, there was a certain show that came out that primed audiences for seeing that, right? Women making a living talking about women's sex lives. And I'll let you guess which one it is right after the break.
Curious about next-gen men? We're a small part of a much larger movement to undefine masculinity for a brighter future. Our mission is clear: empower the next generation to use their curiosity, empathy, and courage to build a more equitable world. Join the Next Gen Men community as we learn and unlearn together. We're here to support boys and men to break free from limiting stereotypes. We're not just an organization, we're a catalyst for reimagining masculinity and fostering inclusivity. We're here to help open up possibilities for what men and boys can be. Explore the world of Next Gen Men at nextgenmen.ca and join the community to make a difference. Next Gen Men, shaping tomorrow's leaders one step at a time. Join us and help undefine masculinity and empower the next generation of men to lead with empathy and courage.
And we're back. And Remoy was just about to guess what show from the 90s walked so women making money talking about sex could run. What do you think this is, Remoy?
I mean, in the late 90s, when I'm presuming what show it is came out, I was a horny teenager, and HBO and was a place to, see boobs and stuff. And this was a show where you could see boobs very occasionally. So this was Sex in the City.
It's interesting. You were like seeing boobs. I was like just trying to learn English. But yes, you're correct.
Tomato again. Whatever.
Yeah. So there are so many podcasts with women having these conversations, right? Like now, right? Like women talking about sex. But in 1998, when Sex and the City came out, it was kind of a breakthrough moment. Like you had the Golden Girls, right? You had Rose talking about sex, right? It was Rose, not Blanche. It was Blanche. It was Blanche. You're right. It was Blanche. But it wasn't in the lens of women talking about so much that women writers are actually making money from talking about this, right? Like, and from women reading that content.
Yeah, I think I see what you mean. Like women talking about sex still today in a lot of places is pretty taboo.
Oh, yeah. And while you had unprecedented conversations and situations that were explored on this mainstream show, it was a show of its time. And watching the show now is sort of like, how was this allowed to rock?
Right, but weren't like all the characters just these like well-off, cisgender, skinny white women, right?
Yeah. I mean, it honestly becomes even more interesting when we take a look at masculinity with a hard K on the show, right? Like the kind of men that were viewed as dateable or marriage material versus the ones that gave the ick, as the kids say, like feels representative of masculinity with a hard K.
So we're going to look at a show about women, but focus on the men instead. Okay, cool. Yeah, your idea, not mine. Sure.
I mean, hey, that's fair. But this is a good bridge to seeing how women characters perpetuate patriarchy as well on screen, which honestly is a conversation that we should be having a lot more.
Yeah, man. I mean, patriarchy is a cultural situation. It's not only just us, meaning the guys. So much of the performance, of masculinity kind of in our modern commodified world is about men making them viable candidates to be women's partners, protectors, providers. So I'm wondering, the show that I only watched for horniness, did it challenge any of that?
I mean, it honestly really did not. Like the men were kind of one-dimensional. Like, for example, if you take Mr. Big, who is this tycoon whose real name we don't even know until the end of the series. Like, yeah, like he's a perfect example of that.
I'm assuming has a large eggplant, but is that right? I mean, what else are we talking about here?
I mean, it was implied. It was implied. Well, so let me put you on game. So Carrie and Big meet in the first episode. He's her on and off lover throughout the show. They nickname him Big because of everything about him is big, right? He's big, tall guy. He has a successful big job. He usually rolls up to her apartment in a town car and just rolls down the window and just like has a rose just poking out the window, a glass of champagne, a gift, whatever. Just tycoon shit.
Sure. Life is that easy. Cool, man. Good for you, Chris knows.
Yeah, I mean, everything about him can be viewed kind of as the traditionally ideal man, right? He's got money. He's not stingy with it. Doesn't talk about his feelings on that much, but he can crack a joke and be very charming. He can whisk Carrie off to St. Bart's whenever he feels like it. Like, really ideal, but only on paper, though.
I don't know what you're saying.
Well, so he's emotionally distant. His career is his main focus. Carrie's always second. Being with him is an emotional roller coaster, if you will. Shout out to Vivian Green. She feels like she never knows where she stands, even though a lot of times he does tell her where she stands, and she just doesn't listen because she doesn't like the answer.
Yeah, all the tropes. Why? What are we doing here? Okay, fine. I thought this was a feminist show.
Exactly, but we'll get into that, So like somehow Big is like still painted as Carrie's ideal, right? He's still her ultimate love interest. She spends a lot of the show thinking about Big. What is Big doing? See, she's trying to get back with Big. In spite of her finding a great man in Aiden. Like that's kind of like the other love interest in the show.
Okay, but if Aiden is great, why doesn't she just pick him?
That's a really good question. I mean, the short answer, honestly, is that he's a nice guy. If we're going to keep going with the tropes and the stereotypes, like there are a number of ways that the show demonstrates that he's a better partner for Carrie. Still in the traditional sense, let's say that. But yeah, he's better for her. He asks her to give a smoking to be with him, whereas Carrie and Big smoke all the time together. He's a cigar smoker, just unhealthier, right? Or unhealthy, right? Big wasn't willing to go to Carrie's apartment because he liked his own bed. Whereas Aiden comes over to Carrie's all the time. He offers to fix her floorboards. He's always trying to fix shit around the house. You know, they even wait to like sleep together, Aiden and Carrie, whereas Big slept and Carrie slept together on the first date. So, you know.
I mean, Aiden sounds like he's set up to be the Adam Brody, right? Like the character that I would fall in love with. But I know who this actor is. It's John Corbett, and I hate John Corbett, so I can't stand with Aiden. But I can't stand with Mr. Big because he sucks too. So I don't know.
He does like, how can anybody hate John Corbett? But I digress. Yeah, Aiden's gonna do anything for her, including letting Big crash their weekend getaway because he and Carrie are friends now, I guess, and he's having dating trouble. So now he wants to like come up to the cabin and like talk it out with Carrie, and Aiden says yes. It's like, what? Would you have done this if you were Aiden? You gonna let the person that your girlfriend cheated on you with come up to the cabin, talk about his dating life? Like, where are we?
mean, I've been in instances where I'm more of the Big character and less of the Aiden, minus the Big part. But whatever, man. This show's stupid. I don't know. It's one-dimensional seeming.
They find out. Well, you know, you're proof that anybody can reform. Okay, so
see,
yeah, you know, I feel like there's been a lot of discourse on this, but Carrie is a bit of an asshole, right? I mean, like dudes are bending over backwards for her all the time, except for the one that she wants to be with, Mr. Big. And it's almost because he like doesn't bend over backwards for her. Like he stands her up at the altar in the movie, and she's like, "Oh, I tried to be bigger than Big," like blaming herself for getting stood up at the altar. You imagine?
Yeah, this is just annoying me right now. So I'm definitely glad I didn't watch it in all its patriarchal nonsense.
Yeah, like Carrie irked me the whole series. Like at the time, I felt like Aiden might have been a better choice because I was like 19, 20, and I just couldn't fathom that, you know, a woman might be able to live her life, be fulfilled, live it well without being with someone. And a lot of people on the show felt the same way. Like all the main characters felt the same way. Like she had to choose somebody. She couldn't stay alone.
Well, then I'm wondering, why did you keep watching it? And how do you feel about keeping watching it? And how do you feel about it now?
You know, those are really good questions. I kept watching it because it was like I was in the sauce, man. I was in the patriarchy sauce. I was like, these four beautiful women that wear designer clothes that I'll never get to wear are like running around New York City dating all these hot guys. Like it was motherfucking dope. But then, you know, looking back, I'm like, they were upholding certain standards of femininity that were just, you know, for wealthy white women that had nothing to do with me, right? But, you know, I didn't have the wherewithal to catch that. And now I wouldn't have picked either Big or Aiden for Carrie. Like Aiden's character was the nicer side of patriarchal manhood, so to speak, right? And that would have worked for Carrie because it's kind of what she was looking for-ish. But, you know, like at the end of the day, it was really very much this kind of like battle, you know, of the dudes or whatever with this bad boy tycoon versus like this nurturing provider. And it just felt like it just feels now like it's such a dilution of the humanity in men. Like all the guys on the show sort of played into a stereotype that fell into one of three categories. Like you're either the provider who was emotionally present, the provider who was emotionally absent, or the playboy. And like, as a partner, like an actual partner, not being a provider was out of the question. And I kind of want to ask you, do you fall into any of these three categories? Let's think about 25-year-old Remoy.
I don't know, man. I was just a dumb kid. No.
No? You weren't the situationship playboy?
But I've always contained my multitudes, man. And so these characters sound pretty flat. You know what I mean?
Honestly, it just goes back to that thing of just because women are front and center does not mean it's not patriarchal, right? Like even Steve was my favorite out of all of them by far because he's so kind, so open. You know, he felt emasculated when he didn't have the proper suit for a fancy party at Miranda's law firm.
That just sounds dumb, but fine. Okay, sure.
Well, I mean, I feel like that is real for so many of us. Like for so many people, you know, like the whole like money situation plays a part in our relationship. But Steve was so good to Miranda in so many different ways. She had her own money. In the world of the show, though, they could only work if he was a provider himself, even though she was really honestly more worried about his maturity level than his bank account. By the time they get together, albeit accidentally, he's become the owner of a bar, right? Just like way up in his economic situation.
I just like my thing with this is like, again, it's going to go back to the chicken or egg. Are people doing that because of their default, or is it because they're being conditioned by shows like these that are continuing this narrative, right?
Exactly, right? Because shows like this do box us into these narrow choices. Like when we talked about TV dads, for example, like there was this tension that each character was exploring within their own masculinity, how comedy can grapple with the mask that is masculinity, right? Masculinity with a hard K, like society thinking of what a real man is versus what the reality is of just being a man, right? Like, and how those realities can be different. Like this is a comedy show too, but that tension just has been completely flattened out so that they could build stereotypical profiles of dudes for men to choose from.
Like a dating app come to life.
Yep. I see that actually. And not to mention the patriarchy in the show didn't stop at men, right? Well, the flattening out due to patriarchy did not stop at men. Like there was a lot of phobia. A lot of phobia.
Sure, rich white women in the 90s and 2000s. No phobias, no. I didn't really watch the show, but I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, just because there were gay characters does not mean that they were portrayed as full humans with multitudes. Like it was kind of, if you had to look at it, really, it was like about the way that LGBTQ characters were talked to and talked about that was suspect rather than like whether or not they were there.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I mean, one episode, Samantha wants these Black trans women to stop talking loudly outside her window at night, and these women are misgendered the whole time. And Carrie's voiceover, along with a lot of other kind of like weird, like racial, like Avi references that are really cringy. And basically it's like, oh, Samantha gets her way with men, right? And it's like, that's not what's going on. At one point, Carrie says that being bisexual is just a pit stop to being gay. And of course, we're only talking about men. We're not even talking about women being like, part of the LGBTQ community or femme people or anything. So
like what is good about this show?
I mean, at the time, it did explore a lot of issues from women's perspective, like unapologetically, so to speak, like menopause, loss, incidents during sex, rejection, divorce, impotence. Like each of the main characters had a distinct personality. So you really saw how they responded to things differently. So in a way, there was an attempt at multitudes, right? And I feel like that's where it could feel like the show was empowering to women, just acknowledging the fullness of women's lives in a way that supposedly hadn't been done before. Now, women being both consumers of sex-related content and providers of sex-related content was also especially cool.
Yeah, I mean, sure. White women, okay.
Right. I mean, the show explored a lot of issues, but there's just certain socioeconomic issues that so many of us women like deal with that just never came up. I mean, Samantha got into it with like a Black woman
Samantha being Kim Cattrall's character, right? She was like the kind of more sexually adventurous and strong-willed type of character.
Yeah. So she gets into it because she's dating this Black dude or whatever. And her sister is basically like, you can't date my brother, da 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 da. And it's like, so it feels very unmotivated if you're watching the show. And for me, that really reinforced the whole like upper middle class whiteness of the show. Like watching it now, at the time I was kind of like, I was like, white people deal with racism too. Just kidding. I wasn't like that. But that's kind of what the show was trying to paint. Like in the show, like Carrie spending all her money on Manolo Blahniks, and that's why she can't afford to like, I don't know, fix her computer. Manolo Blahniks are $600 a pair. It's crazy.
Yeah, Alex, can I get things I can't relate to for $400, please?
Right.
So, the show is all about dating and finding men to marry. Like that sounds lame, patriarchal. No.
Pretty much. I mean, outside of Samantha, yeah, like at one point, I mean, Miranda's kind of considered, she's like the lawyer who's like hyper pragmatic. She's kind of considered to be the feminist, if feminist had been a word in the show. And she did call the group out once for being accomplished, smart women who spend so much of their time worrying about boyfriends, which was true. But then she kind of walked it back, so people weren't really thinking about decentering men like that back then. And also, dare I say it, feminism wasn't really in the main discourse back then. Like, not like it is now, not like it had been prior to then and after then.
Yeah, I guess that tracks. I'm sure people were thinking about it. I mean, feminine mystique was still 30 years prior, and there was feminist movements that came before that, but they'd kind of died down by that point.
And so like now there's like a reboot and just like that, which kind of feels like it's trying to reclaim old Sex and the City vibes with like a tablespoon of wokeness.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Well, I hate when people use that term because no one besides the Black people who came up with that word know what being woke or like staying woke means. But I mean, and some other folks obviously, but you have a lot more LGBTQ and BIPOC characters actually calling the women out on their shit.
That's a good thing, I feel, no?
Well, it seems like it is, right? Like Miranda's tripping all over herself, trying to do the right thing. She gets course corrected by her hot Black professor who is having magical sex of her own, which seems good on the surface. But then it's like, it feels like a lot of the wokeness was a lot, right? Like including that it felt kind of forced to have these BIPOC people and LGBTQ people show up in the fullness on the show.
Did it?
Yeah. A little bit. I mean, just in the sense that it feels like a lot of the people of color on the show and the LGBTQ people on the show, like the gay folks on the show, are there to teach the white women, like the white cis het women something, right? So like they're there to serve a function. They don't exist for their own purpose. And like that's not in like in a supporting character type of way, but it's literally in like a inclusion and diversity. Let's make sure that we have, BIPOC folks and, gay folks on the show so that we don't get canceled type shit. So just one dimensional.
Damn. Okay, but what about the men in this reboot?
Well, no spoilers because the show's still on, but there are like questions of division of labor among relationships come up, right? Like women pursuing their careers, which leaves the husbands to figure it out at home.
Sounds sick. But they're all married now?
Well, yeah. So Samantha's actually gone, but the other three are married. So Charlotte, when the show starts, like Charlotte has a new friend played by Nicole Ari Parker, who they're both more traditional than Carrie and Miranda are, and their husbands are the type of guys to ask them what's for dinner, even if they see them falling asleep at their desk type of situation.
Yeah, this sounds like 1990s original Sex and the City, no?
Right. Exactly. And like, I appreciate that came up because, we talked on this show about how, COVID, when COVID was at its height, a lot of women were spending 28% more time on housework than men were in the household, even though both were working full time. And so one of the women in the show defends herself against her husband, but the other one just kind of like brushes it off. But what I wanted to see was like, the dudes checking themselves about that, right? It's like, you said you're supportive of your wife's career, be supportive of your wife's career, but neither of them checks themselves on it. It's just kind of like,
Yeah, it sounds like there aren't a lot of different masculinities in this reboot either.
Yeah, it feels like a little bit of flattening. Besides the main white women that are there, and maybe a little bit of Nicole Ari Parker, which is great. It's all pretty flat. And audience, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Like, keep me honest. Like, I really honestly don't see how it's like evolved and become sort of like this thoughtful show. I still feel like it's largely patriarchal, in particular on the part of the men, which is disappointing. Can we please get some thoughtful masculinity in these premium shows?
Well, I thought you'd never ask. That's coming up right after the break.
I actually found out later by a friend that Matthew tried to kill himself after that.
What does it look like to go from a perpetrator of violence to an undaunted ally for those who are vulnerable?
So, I mean, that made me feel really guilty. And I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. I mean, I thought I deserved what he got. That's when I started talking to you.
This is the story of Lewis, a 12-year-old who went through a remarkable transformation to become the young man he is today. It's also one of the most powerful things I've ever recorded as part of Breaking the Boy Code, a podcast centered on the inner lives of boys and what it looks like for parents and educators to raise the next generation of men. Created in collaboration with Next Gen Men Podcast Network, listen to Breaking the Boy Code podcast wherever you get podcasts.
And we're back. Samantha, do you remember what show I introduced you to last episode?
Pop quiz. Okay. I believe that was Shrinking.
Ding, 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 ding. But the real pop quiz, do you remember what Shrinking is about? Not the bonus question, the real quiz. What is Shrinking about?
Well, Harrison Ford's in it, so there's probably like a curmudgeon situation going on. And he's a therapist, so he's like, therapist who's grumpy but trying to be better.
I won't say an F, but I'll give you a C, maybe even a C minus.
Oh my God.
But maybe a B. I don't know. But in the wake of...
Let's go with B at least.
Your answer, that was adequate at best. And last week's appetizer, not to mention all the Golden Globe snubs Shrinking got this last weekend. Let's expand your knowledge and our audience's overall appreciation of Shrinking even more today. Come on.
I mean, I'd like to do that because I'm not a C student, so yes.
Yeah, but I'll go, let's do it a different way than we did with you and Sex and the City.
Remoy, ever the contrarian.
Keeping it on brand, baby. What I thought we'd do is I'd show you 5 different clips from throughout the 2 seasons of the show, and you can just ask me questions about those scenes. Pop quiz me, actually, test my own fandom and knowledge.
Oh, I like that. Let's do it.
Yeah, and these clips, I pick them as we go through it. I hope you and the audience will get to know the show and kind of the storylines and characters, and naturally you'll pull out some of the masculinity themes. How does that sound?
That sounds awesome. I'm very ready to pop quiz you.
Okay, let's do the first. Actually, before, do you remember the cast of the show?
Oh, yeah. Jason Segel's also in this. And I want to say...
Okay, we're at a B+.
Thank you. I think Jessica Williams is in this. My girl she used to be in the Daily Show. Really tall. She's like 6'1".
Do you remember, you weren't there, but do you remember the time I was hanging out with Jessica Williams and had thought she was somebody we worked with in Soho? I was like, who is that girl? I know who that is. Didn't we work with her in Soho somewhere? And people were like, oh, dude, she's on TV.
Oh my God, that's wild.
And I was like, oh yeah.
How are you hanging out with her?
Do you remember the Hot Bird beer garden?
Yeah.
We were all there for Chris Randall's birthday, and Jessica Williams' birthday was that same time.
Oh my God.
And we were just the next table over, and I just kept being like, yo, I know her. I freaking know her. How do I me and a couple, we were like, yeah, how do we know her? And then Saunders was like, idiots, she's on TV. And I was like,
yeah. Oh, that's dope. Yo, shout out to Hot Bird. That's some bomb-ass chicken and waffles. Really, I mean, probably weren't ancient chicken, but yeah.
Vegan still drank beer at the time. A lot of good beer. A lot of hot humans. Okay, speaking of Jessica Williams and the cast of Your Name, it's actually a full ensemble show. A lot of lesser known actors that, I don't know if I even remember the names, but just great characters come to life. A lot of hot comedy. You can see the writers, and as the show progresses, finding real stars in in the sub characters that come to life throughout the series. And I think you'll see that in our first clip. And, it's a little bit of an antithesis to the tail ends of what we talked about in Sex and the City. So, you ready?
I'm ready.
May I help you?
Just looking for a dead plant.
That is not your trash.
Okay, let's start over. So, my name is Sean, and I'm guessing you're Karen?
It's Pam.
Pam, the family knows him. Why don't you go home and post some shit on Nextdoor on how the neighborhood's changing?
He's staying with us, Pam. Were you dropping off some welcome muffins?
Wait, the guy that almost beat someone to death is staying with you? Jimmy, what the fuck are you doing?
It's fine. Alice is cool with it.
No, I'm not, but I agree Pam's a racist.
I'm moving into VA housing.
Hey, you don't owe her an explanation.
Why am I the bad guy?
Liz and I are just trying to protect the neighborhood.
Stop. There's no Liz and I.
You need me over here, babe?
No.
Oh, thank God. Hey, Jimmy.
Hey, Derek.
Hey, Pam.
Hey. No, there's no hey, Pam. We don't like Pam.
Got it. Eat a dick, Pam.
Okay, so this is from this scene is from an early part of season 1 as we're getting to know all about the show. So Samantha, what would you like to know about this scene?
Okay, so both Jason Segel's character and the dude that was, I think the audience gathered that this is a black man that was going through looking for the plant, have a black eye. Did they fight each other?
So in the episode the clip we saw last episode of ours, we saw a father talking to Jason Segel and Harrison Ford. So this was his son, Sean is the character's name, who was served in the military and came back with some severe post-traumatic stress syndrome. And he was got into some disorderly conduct coming back with the aggression and violence. And he was mandated by the courts to see a therapist and yada, yada, yada. He gets connected to Jason Segel, and Segel himself is going through a little bit of a renaissance in his career and come up with this new treatment method of getting very personally involved. And to the degree that he asked Sean to come live with him in the guest house. So Sean, this young black man, is now living in, middle class, upper middle class Pasadena with Jason Segel, and hijinks ensue.
So Jason Segel is married, right? Do they have any kids?
Jason Segel was married, and his daughter is one of the people you saw in that clip. She's the one who's like in the house and says she doesn't agree with this, but Pam is a racist. That's Jason Segel's daughter. His wife and her mother died tragically in a drunk driving accident where she was not the drunk person. And so Jason Segel's character, Jimmy, has also been going through a very serious depression. And hence I mentioned he's going through his own revival of trying new things in his practice. It's also a way for him to kind of treat his own trauma and pain, is to help these other people away in really dramatic ways.
I like that because I feel like some people might feel away, like you're living with your daughter, you have this grown man moving with you, you don't know where that's going to go. So I feel like that's a departure for something that we would normally see, which I appreciate.
What else? Maybe let's do one more question if you got it. If not, we can move to the next clip.
What's going on with Derek? Is he just like really, is he really as nice as he seems, like super supportive and chill?
Oh, man. When I mentioned like some characters like really come to life, and like you can tell that they were written initially as minor characters, but then they come to life and they get written like more and more. Derek becomes a star of the show. Ted McGinley, like he's hilarious and so charming, and so is his wife, who is in this clip we just saw, Liz. So Liz and Derek, they're initially these very small characters, but they become such hilarious best friends to the overall group and bring the ensemble life. Derek is hilarious. The different types of quote unquote masculinity represented in the show is so charming and fun, and Derek is a really fun way it's represented. So love Derek. Great character.
Beautiful. Yeah.
All right. Well, this last clip, we got a lot out of it. Voices, characters, even story. And you asked a question that I helped kind of tease some of it out. Now we're going to make a huge leap for the next clip and go into season 2, and it helps fill in some of the backstory that we just touched on, plus, some of the masculinity and intimacy that we usually regularly don't get to see on screen. So you ready?
I'm ready.
Jimmy was right about one thing: the importance of facing your demons head on. That means seeing an old friend. You got the coping skills. Do it. You can't spend your life hiding from your trauma. If you don't truly deal with your past, it'll come back for you.
Came here to apologize. You did it, you should go. I know you must hate me, but if you could, I would really like...
Get the f*** out of here! Get out of here! Get the f*** out of here!
questions.
What?
Hey, how'd the rest of your day go?
Yeah, it was good. It was great.
Wow.
What burning questions do you have for me about this scene?
Okay, so I'm assuming, obviously, that the guy who rolled up in the hospital, Jason Segel saw him. They had like a flashback of what I presume was the accident with his wife and other daughter dying, right? And so that guy comes to the hospital to apologize. He's like, get the fuck out of here. Does the daughter know that the guy is coming to the hospital to apologize? Like, she seemed like she knew something, or maybe she was just reading his energy.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of like, there's a lot happening in the scene. So initially, Harrison Ford's character, Paul, is talking to Sean. So Sean, again, the war veteran, counseling him on some specific traumas he's going through and how to navigate that with some friends in his life. But at the same time, we see on screen Jason Segel's character of Jimmy doing two things. He's at the same therapist clinic, and the character who accidentally drunkenly murdered Jimmy's wife, played by Brett Goldstein from Ted Lasso, for the Ted Lasso fans out there, Apple crossover, shows up at the clinic to maybe, we don't know why, and right when Jimmy sees him, he like starts losing his shit. And so this is deep into season 2, and Jimmy's been working on the trauma of his now past wife and partner and the effects that's had on him now as a single parent. But now he's literally forced to confront the individual that caused so much pain and harm in his life, and how he reacts is very aggressively and violent towards him. And at this point in the show, his daughter, who we see towards the end and is asking him how his day is gone, doesn't know that he has seen this perpetrator of accidental violence and trauma in his life.
Wow. I thought it was dope how they were like, what's the film term? Like juxtaposing, or like they're like paralleling scenes or whatever. It's like confronting the trauma while he's talking to dude in Harrison Ford's character is talking to dude in the office. It's like Jason Segel's character is like definitely confronting that head on, like in the therapist's office. Just really good TV.
And doing it poorly though.
Yeah. Which is, I think, great, because it's like, okay, you can therapize all you want, but when that shit hits you, it's like you gotta. That's when you have to apply what you've learned, right? And sometimes it's not. It takes a while. It's not something that you can like flip on and off, even if you've done the internal work. Like the actual application of the work might, take a while. So, love that. I have more comments than questions, because I feel like I kind of get everything else that's going on. But one thing that was hard, that my heart like baby sank a little bit, was when his daughter asked him how he is, and he says everything is fine. Because it's like, what can you say? Your daughter lost her mom, and you just saw the person who did it. And like, what are you supposed to say? Like, can he be anything other than stoic in that situation to protect her, so to speak?
Well, I'll just say this, that like, what's another thing in the show that I don't know if we'll get to through these clips, but all the characters are all going on their quote unquote journeys, right? So Jimmy is doing all this, but a good chunk of the first season, again, this is more in the second season. So when we hear his daughter, Jimmy's daughter, Alice, like ask him how he's doing in a very kind, thoughtful way, that was not the case for most of the first season, because of how much he had gone off on his own bender to cope with his trauma of drinking and alcohol and drugs and being a bad father. Alice was supremely pissed at her father, and there was no kindness or support either way. There was more resentment, pain, and frustration. So by this point, they're back to an evolved state, and Jimmy doesn't want to fuck that up, right? So at the end, when he's like, oh, everything's fine, he doesn't want to cause any more pain or friction between him and his daughter.
And then that look on her face is probably like, oh shit, what if he's drinking again type thing. Okay.
It could be, yeah. Well, there's there's the one person that I'm best friends with, obviously, because I remember who her name is and who she is. We haven't seen her in these clips so far, and that's Jessica Williams, best part of the show, possibly the third therapist of the group, Gabby. And I think you'll appreciate this clip from her back in season 1.
I'm sorry that I had sex with Auntie Gabby.
Oh my God. Dude, she's literally never called me Auntie Gabby in her fucking life. Why would you say that? Are you trying to make it weirder?
I'm not trying, it's just happening.
Okay, I'm gonna go.
Wait, please, just... We feel like the only way to get to the other side of this is with an honest conversation.
That's right.
I don't want to hear about how you desecrated Gabby.
Hold up. We actually desecrated each other.
That's right, she did a lot of the heavy lifting.
And you know me. You really think I didn't have a fucking say in this? You think it's just all based on his charisma and his game? Look at your dad's face. That's the face of somebody who's only slept with what? 2 to 3 women tops?
It's just face.
Okay.
Oh my God. Fine, you win. Gabby, okay, I'm fucking mad at you now too. Do you want me to call you mommy?
Hey, I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. Your father and I, we had a discussion and we decided that it was a huge mistake.
Absolutely right. We were both just in a vulnerable spot. And,
No.
Okay. And it meant nothing.
Nothing.
So to get this straight, you banged someone who doesn't mean anything to you but meant a lot to mom, and you did it in mom's bed.
It was my bed too, okay? Did it come from her childhood home? Yes. Was it a gift from Grandpa after Grandma died? Sure. But it wasn't just her bed. It was mine also. Also, it didn't all happen in the bed.
Stop.
There was some standing.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm gonna go puke.
Okay, so this show's adorable. Is Gabby the wife's best friend?
You nailed it. They were definitely best friends. Tia, the now deceased wife and partner, as Gabby and her were best friends, but also Gabby is a therapist, and it's basically the 3 therapists in this one clinic: Harrison Ford, the old head, and then Jimmy and Gabby.
So was it a mistake? Like, does the show inch toward like maybe they should be together?
The show kind of runs up against traditional TV issues of like romance and kind of those driving pursuits and the drama and the tension it creates. Because spoiler-ish, Gabby and Jimmy have a really cute relationship towards the end of season 1, and it's somewhere in between friends with benefits and something a little bit more. And then in season 2, it kind of changes, or for the end of season 1, it changes. But they're also really good friends and coworkers and colleagues, so they have to navigate that. But they're both just great comedic actors, so it's a lot of comedy and real just evolved support and understanding of relationships. And being the fact that they are therapists as characters, like you can understand that they're so well to like communicate and understand and boundaries and things like that, right? That seem like kind of annoying, but the way that they kind of portrayed on screen is really funny and charming and cool.
Cute. How long ago did the wife die?
Ooh, that's going. It's only been a handful of years at most.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if it's like visual, like factually communicated, or if it is, it's like a tiny detail at some point that I don't remember. But it's only been a handful of years, and they're all processing it very differently between Tia, the daughter, Jimmy, the father, and Gabby, the best friend and colleague.
Okay. Wow.
We'll see in one clip towards the end, but the male characters and their friendships are special in this, but the female characters have just great friendships and banter throughout the show. So whether it's Tia, the now deceased mom, and Gabby, or Tia and her daughter, even Tia and Liz, the neighbor, are just really friendly, supportive, great characters. Actually, let's get into that next clip. Again, we're evolving this, how our understanding of the show is. So this is coming off the last few clips.
Gabby wants me to go to her divorce party tonight.
So?
I don't want to. It feels fake.
I can assure you, Gabby is getting a divorce.
It's pissing me off.
Makes sense. Divorce is always hardest on the coworkers.
She's totally in denial. She's acting like she's super psyched about it, and I know what you're going to say.
No, you don't.
I'm triggered because Gabby is choosing to end a marriage, and I didn't get to make that choice.
Okay, you did know. Come on, kiddo. You don't get to dictate how other people grieve. So Gabby puts on a brave face. Who gives a shit? Me, I got to kick and scream for a while before I face the truth. But then I face it like a hero. But you, who knows how you grieve? You haven't even begun.
What are you talking about? I've been grieving for a fucking year.
No, you've been numbing.
Oof, some hard truths in there. So remind me, they basically are all working at the same practice, right?
Yeah, it's Harrison Ford Paul's like practice.
Oh, I see. Okay. So wait, so is it like, how does the show start? Like, is it like Jason Segel or Jimmy starts working there, or like how, or is it just like?
No, they've all been working there. I think Gabby's like maybe the newest employee there, the newest therapist, doctor there, but they've all been working there.
I see. So the inciting incident is Jimmy's wife dying.
The inciting incident is like Jimmy in the middle of a bender with like some drugs and alcohol and stuff devolves, and then he comes to this come to light moment at the clinic of like how he's going to change how he works with patients.
Okay. Is he right about Gabby? Like, is she doing the divorce party to like deflect?
Yeah. So Gabby, the last scene Gabby and Uncle Jimmy are having a good time. And it's because one of the reasons is like Gabby is coming out of a long-term marriage where like a lot of women, whether in reality or portrayed in TV shows, have to be the emotional support and the caring and the financial support for maybe delinquent men or men who can't seem to find their own way. So Gabby's coming out of a marriage that this, tortured artist, painter, husband just couldn't make it work and was also kind of maybe, I don't remember if he was cheating on her or just delinquent in his own just personal life. And so she was coming to a point where it was time to split up. And so she's going through this divorce, and the way that she wanted to help process that was have a divorce long time in the making. And then by the time this happens in this episode, she's having a fun divorce party to like kind of commemorate, mourn, and grieve it. Got
it. Okay. I'm so curious about, is it Lewis? Harrison Ford's character?
Oh, Paul.
About his, he described the way that he processes pain. He has to kick and scream or whatever, break shit, whatever, before he's able to like face it. I wonder how much that comes up in the show.
It plays a major role. So there's a couple things that Paul's wrestling with that makes it's funny, but it's also meaningful. Is like major thing is being an elder statesman. He has Parkinson's, and he's like figuring out how to deal with that in the world, and how his body is betraying him. He can't control his own body. And B, leaning into the handsome Harrison Ford thing. He was a womanizer of sorts, and he himself cheated on his wife when they were young kids, and his wife left him and took the kids, and he never fully resolved his relationship with his estranged children, and that plays a key role in some of the B and C plots throughout season 1 and 2. And so he's wrestling with that, and the fact that he is such a stodgy, curmudgeonly, stubborn old man, and these young therapists like Jessica Williams and him, Gabby and Paul have a really funny push and pull relationship, and it's really cool to watch because in a way, not only is Paul Jimmy's mentor, Paul is Gabby's mentor, and Gabby and Paul have a really cool like supportive father-daughter relationship in ways that is just really hilarious and cool to see.
I like this show.
Find the last clip. Let me prepare your questions. This is more a montage, not one direct scene, but I think it's a montage that, for a person who's never seen the show, and especially coming off our conversation of Sex in the City and maybe some of its problematic issues or what it embodied on screen, this will be the opposite of that.
Don't clap at me. I'm too grown for that, Liz. I'm gonna lose my You wanna get drunk?
Very badly. Am I allowed to clap?
Oh, please let me do it with you. Okay, please.
Show us the ring!
Okay, don't love you as friends. You two are annoying.
You shook hands?
Yes.
What a nice gesture.
Do you want to come with me to an art show?
Yes, I'll drive. Too thirsty?
Liz, a little help, please.
I got you.
Freckle here, freckle there. Freckle here, freckle there, that painting is me. It works for us. It's part of our brand.
We have a brand? I'm so excited we have a brand.
Still don't love these two as friends.
And we don't give a
It makes us stronger.
That's a pretty bra. I want one.
No.
Come on, don't be like that.
As you know, I give these special agates to a select few people.
Do we do a ceremony? Do we need to chant?
Nope. Just love you.
Love you.
So how did they become friends?
So, as we saw in the very first clip, Liz is one of Jimmy's neighbors. He's like his direct neighbor, Liz and Derek. And again, I don't know how much of Liz's character is emphasized in season 1 and season 2, but because she is such a charismatic, charming actor and how she brings Liz to life, as Aunt Gabby comes over to hang out with Jimmy and Tia, his daughter, there's crossover between Liz hanging out and butting in as Liz is like a parachute neighbor or does at times, and quickly over time their lives correspond and become besties, as sometimes friendships can happen.
Okay.
And again, this model is like a lot of really healthy female relationships, and there's a lot of crossover with Tia, the daughter. So the three of them, and this kind of like tripod of like three different females in different parts of their lives and different socioeconomic backgrounds and situations and cultures become besties, and it's really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I have a question about, like, I feel like with Sex and the City a lot is like we're focusing on Carrie. Like the characters were made such that it was like Carrie and then like, you know, Miranda, Charlotte, and Samantha were basically represented three different parts of Carrie's personality. So it kind of made it basically made it so that Carrie was, like, you know, they were almost supporting characters to her while still being lead characters, right? In this friendship between those two women, do you feel like their interests are represented equally? Like, do you feel like one of them is more of a sidekick or like more of like a supporting character?
Gabby, because it's Jessica Williams and is more of a known quantity, she's more of the primary female character of the show at large. But because, again, it is like an ensemble show that's really winning and great story creation and writing, like Liz becomes a primary, tertiary character, if that's not an oxymoron. And so as season 2 progresses, her and her husband, Derek, again, hilarious, individually and together, they become more. And so they have their own storylines that take the forefront or take this stage. Gabby's is a primary throughout the series. Jimmy's, Jason Segel's, is like the primary story, but, you know, these supporting stories get a lot of time on screen too, and it's a lot of fun.
Okay, so my last question for you is one thing that, you know, obviously this show kind of grapples with masculinity, confronting like demons that sometimes, you know, the mask doesn't let men confront. And I wonder about how, like, it seems like the friendships are developed across genders, like really developed across genders. Do you feel like the friendships between men, I mean, I feel like I'm going to answer my own question because it seems like that kind of show, but I do want to talk about it. Like, do you feel like the friendships between women and the friendships between men, or the friendships between men and the friendships between other genders are just as rich, just as deep, just as like messy, but like in the good way?
Yeah, I think they're all rich and connected. I don't even know if they're that messy as per like traditional TV messiness. Like, obviously Jimmy and Gabby have like a romantic tryst that gets a little messy in some way, but it's actually pretty responsible and they mature and handle it. Even if you remember Sean, the young black man who's living with Jimmy, Jimmy's daughter, Tia, ends up having a crush on Sean. And there's a moment where she's really attracted to him. But the way they handle it is very responsibly. And Sean, this young black man, this young man, doesn't let his opportunity or his libido get the best of him. He respects her and wants to be a responsible, caring person. And they just become friends. And they're like completely supportive of one another throughout the show and friendly. And there's other moments, like no spoilers, but one of the storylines that brings Liz, the funny neighbor, in is she momentarily cheats on Derek. And a typical show would make her to be the bad one, and like Derek has the right to be upset. But really, the way that the show kind of shifts the perspective is like it's more complicated than that, and both people have to do a lot of work to like kind of nurture their relationship. But it's kind of wrapped up super quick. Like they're both quick to learn and adapt and trust and love and care, and the relationships are both very well handled and cared for by the writers and creators of the show, and allowed to make mistakes, but quickly are portrayed in ways that can be shown as like models of what responsible, thoughtful, caring human friendships and relationships can look like.
First of all, shout out to you for the $1 million word, tryst. Is that spelled with a Y? I feel like we should do a word of the day by the literati Doi. I feel like I like that. But anyway, it feels like the show gets a lot of things right. Like in a way where I want to like use this show as a model for how to get things right in my own life in terms of emotional vulnerability and how to deal with conflict.
There's like the claim or the assertion that we kind of walked through last episode about that TV and like sitcoms and comedy can be safe spaces for viewers because it allows them to laugh at the absurdity of men. And contrarily, people who produce these shows or make this kind of media or quote unquote art can't put up like the most pristine or well-to-do or the models of what we should aspire to be, because that would alienate the viewer. And the fact that this show is getting more and more attention on a network or a streamer that really doesn't do much about promoting its shows, and it's got stars that are bringing it to life, and it's getting more and more attention and growing its viewership, I think it's a little bit of evidence of the contrary of that thesis, or maybe just an evolution of that thesis in modern day.
No, I mean, I think like, it's not a sitcom is it a sitcom? I don't know if it situates you
It's a sitcom. It's a single cam, not a multi-cam, but it's a sitcom.
Okay, yeah. So it situates you in the conflict, and then you are allowed to see how people are able to deal with it in an evolved manner. And I think that is like a beautiful thing. And I wish more TV were like that, where, I feel like Sex and the City, and even in just like that, in a lot of ways, like is trying to recapture, like a normalcy, like something that was viewed as normal, but that we really just were nurtured into, which is like the patriarchal nature of the way that we deal with relationships, which is usually top down, rather than here we've got, these like very collaborative approaches, just like listen first, talk later type thing. Very evolved, very evolved.
The show's very funny and charming, such great joke writing and bit-to-bit writing that you got to just go and get your laughs off.
Writing comedy has to be hard. I mean, right? Like, don't you have experience with this?
Sure, man. Don't we all just want to make people laugh?
Yeah. I mean, do you have any advice for me for my new writer's journey? I'm trying to write romance that explores equity. I mean, you would know something about that, right?
I thought we were just trying to decenter men so we could be real feminists.
I mean, who says it's all men?
Heyo.
There will be hetero relationships, but trust. My characters will contain all the multitudes. Just do shit that makes no sense, like men do in real life.
Sure, okay. But what does the audience think? I mean, what are some characters that actually embody the involved masculinity that you want for yourself or you want to see more of? Maybe it sounds like RGP1. I don't know.
I mean, I like that question. By the way, I was kidding. Everybody does ridiculous shit in real life. And please do let us know. Right? Like, as always, we're a masculinity podcast at gmail.com. You can also hit us up on our website, masculinitypod.com.
It'll be someone else checking our socials, not me, probably Samantha, but you can also slide into our DMs there and holler.
Yeah, we had a few people tell us what shows they grew up watching, what they watch now a few weeks back, which was very cool. Thank you very much. Like, shout out to those who made your preferences known. These shows will probably come up in a future episode as we continue to talk about TV. So I actually feel like Remoy, actually some of the ones that people share that I don't. So I'm going to ask you about that, but that's TBD for now.
Are they sports related?
Yes, they are.
I am more than that, but thank you very much.
I mean, don't I know it? You're a multitudinal person. So once again, we'll get back to you about that at some point. But for now, Happy New Year, everyone.
2025, a great way to start it is, 5 stars.
That's right. Wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, and until then, it's your boy Remoy George Philip the First.
And I'm Samantha and Remoy. Thank you so much for listening.
Peace.
Ciao.